I suspect most people are just like me, the peasant lowman who simply sees people saying things and takes it all with a pinch of salt and a hefty amount of skepticism. The problem being that you see these things more and more and they start to become your unquestioned reality. I questioned it merely because of some pompous Reddit comment suggesting that immigrants deserve to live in America more than Americans do. So I decided to start researching how immigration and naturalization works, and I was legitimately surprised by some things like the diversity visa lottery and the EB-5 visa, which allows you to buy permanent residency. The previous video I made was sort of a catch-all, but this one is more about my personal beliefs regarding the diversity visa. Frankly, it's a total joke. I was pretty clear in the other video, even though I tried to keep it of a palatable length, but holy hell is it shocking. It's not even new, by the way. I forgot to mention this in the other video, and I realized after recording it that it sort of sounded like I was doing a bit of a Biden shit my pants, everything is woke sort of thrust, but the diversity visa lottery was established by the Immigration Act of 1990, and it was created for exactly what it sounds like. I'm unsure if it was well intended or just pure optics, but look at how it's snowballed in the 35 years since then. I mean, not just that, obviously, but it adds to it. It used to be 55,000, but now it's 50,000 immigrants are brought here annually through that, or at least up to. I would assume, given that the USA is a superpower, that it usually hits that quota. Now, these aren't all a fresh face. No, the system's been in place for 35 years now, and people could bring over their spouse and children to start, along with sponsoring other family members after naturalizing. How big did the snowball get? How big will it get? There's no practical way to know, and I don't mean to stoke any fires of racism, nor am I saying we should be denaturalizing people who came over decades ago. I'm just saying its current continuation needs to be discontinued. I've researched other countries to see if there's any intentional initiatives to diversify their country. Given how many countries there are and my very limited interest in whether or not Mongolia allows this, I can't say I've thoroughly researched everything, but in a surprising shock to absolutely no one, the USA is on the bleeding edge of wokeness, and apparently has been since long before the term was invented, since before it was reappropriated, since before we ate woke for breakfast, brunch, lunch, dinner, and dessert. Some other countries have their own methods that aren't purely luck of the draw and seemingly don't target underrepresented countries as the USA does, but we stand alone in inviting strangers into our house. Some examples being the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, which have a point-based system where they rank applicants based on things like age and language proficiency, which is funny to me considering that the USA's citizenship test allows people of a certain age who've lived in the country for 20 years or more to take the test in a language other than English. Meanwhile, other countries seemingly restrict immigrants based on age and language comprehension, which makes far more sense to me. Denmark used to have a point system for skilled workers. Ireland and Singapore allow people to buy their way into the country, and interestingly, New Zealand and Estonia allow people to enter the country on the condition that they start a business, which I didn't read the details on because I don't care, but it rather seems like they're rolling out a welcome mat for corruption, doesn't it? By the by, this system has been temporarily suspended by Donald Trump as a direct result of the Brown University shooting that occurred at the end of 2025, as the shooter attained permanent residency through this program in 2017. And it was not the first. In 2002, Hisham Mohammed Hadayet, an Egyptian who used his wife's diversity visa, killed 2 and injured 4 at the Los Angeles International Airport. The potential problem, it doesn't spawn explicitly from potentially violent or fraudulent people who actually won the lottery, but also from their legacy, their children. It's common sense that the winners of the diversity lottery are going to be far less likely to assimilate than someone who came here looking for family or employment, as they have nothing to compel them to. It would of course be unfair to presume any immigrants would have infallible children, but there are risks to weigh. The ideal is that the DV lottery winners assimilate as well as possible in the second generations. Their children are full-blown Americans who are not radicalized by their first-generation parents, but a DV lottery winner is more likely to raise their progeny as a foreigner rather than an American. The problem is that it's impossible to predict whether or not there will even be a problem, and this is solved by not inviting strangers into your house to begin with, especially just for the sake of virtue signaling. Other countries do this. Why not the USA? Why do we operate on a trust system inviting randoms, and then those very same randoms can bring over their spouses and unmarried children, and then they eventually naturalize and they bring over their parents and their siblings and so forth? Why only the USA? Maybe this is just a back in my day we didn't lock our doors sort of scenario. And then I pull up a news clipping of how some other family back in your day was brutally massacred in the middle of the night, proving that your anecdotes are worthless. Your virtue signaling is worthless. That we can't just use feelings to have these incredibly important laws put into place. Even if the USA wasn't already neck deep in diversity quicksand, we would gain nothing from allowing random people into our country. What guilt should we feel over this? I'd love to try living in another country too, myself personally, but I don't expect him to throw open the doors for me and assume that I'm not exactly what Hollywood and social media claims that I am, which would be, well, I'm a white male, so figure it out. Of course, countries that you are allied with or are first world nations would naturally make governments less wary of the immigrants, but in the USA's case, we're intentionally inviting people from underrepresented countries. Oh, yeah, right. Apparently, the UK was allowed into the DV lottery program in 2025. I guess social media did such a good job fear mongering to the Brits that they stopped migrating to the USA, making them eligible. I'm going to say it again, making the UK eligible for the diversity visa program. Jesus. The world has gone very weird in a short amount of time. I can only wonder what people outside of the USA think, particularly the UK. Do others see it sensible that the USA does this? That we're expected to, even by our own people? That our own citizens and politicians will threaten their neighbors with all of the trigger words, accuse them of being a supremacist or whatever if they don't do it? I'm not trying to tear anyone down, but how can you build anything up with policies like this in place, creating problems where none existed? I mean, think about this. Between 2020 and 2025, 5 years, we had 11 million immigrants arrive. This is more than the population of many countries. It's double places like Ireland, Scotland, and Denmark. It's equivalent to places like Sweden and Belgium, and it's a huge chunk of the population of places like France or the UK. Not to mention the illegal immigrants, which also numbers higher than the total population of many countries, currently estimated at 14 million in the USA right now, with nearly half of them having deportation protection through parole authority, courtesy of a change by the Biden administration, which ironically seems to have been done in partiality to counteract a previous Trump-era funding cut. Honestly, it's like rewatching the Disney trilogy, knowing it could have been mid if not for Johnson's tampering with JJ's copy-paste of the OT. Now we have this dumpster fire to deal with, just like Mickey now has the Rise of Skywalker to deal with. By the way, this is all derived from a trope. It seems to be a comical case of the old, ha 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 ha, you've fallen right into my trap. You forgot about this ancient law making me the victor trope that fiction often uses. Yeah, parole authority was created in 1952. It's basically a visa-less free pass if you can make up an excuse to claim that it's for humanitarian reasons or has significant public benefit, both so nebulous that the intent of it is clear. It's the I'll do whatever I want law. An interesting quote attributed to Leon Rodriguez, who served as the director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services during Obama's second term, said that Biden's expansion of parole authority was a necessity because the Biden admin recognized that it cannot address migration flows through deterrence alone. Are you fucking kidding me? We have enough nukes to wipe all life off the face of the planet. We can deter superpower countries by leaking false information about where one of our submarines might be. We're mostly bordered by ocean. Biden's admin seriously lost to Mexican human traffickers and decided the best path forward was just to let people waltz in. I mean, it was used in other ways. Firstly, the Biden administration allowed tens of thousands of Afghans to come over. Then the Ukrainians who fled their country to fence sit in between the USA and Mexico were allowed in. But this, again, it makes us look like a homeless shelter. Need I remind you that the USA cannot take care of its own people, let alone the entire world's downtrodden? For instance, take a look at this. This is the unauthorized immigrants in 2023 who had deportation protection. There were 8 million who didn't and 6 million who did. 6 million unauthorized immigrants, illegal aliens, who had deportation protection. 2.6 million from asylum applicants, because it's basically a way to cheese the system. You don't even have to get asylum. You just apply for it, and they have to figure out whether or not you should or shouldn't get it, and in the meanwhile, you're given like a stay, you know? Then there's 700,000 who were allowed, air quote, legally into the U.S. from the parole authority change. The 700,000 coming from victims and crimes of violence. I'm not entirely sure about that one. I was reading something about it having to do with like witnesses and things like that, but 700,000 is a big number for that. I'm not sure. The temporary protected status, which is available to migrants in the U.S. from countries facing war, natural disasters, or other crises. Yeah, I mean, that's just absurd. Like, you could bring in hundreds of millions of people every year for a description like that. And other crises? What does that even mean? That it just means anything, right? You may as well just make the law say, "I do what I want." I I was looking at the changes for this as well. Right before the end of the Biden administration, the then Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas granted an additional 18 months, which is the maximum they can give, to immigrants from El Salvador, Sudan, Ukraine, and Venezuela. An unprecedented move, apparently, to help them remain in the U.S. after Trump took office. Well, yes, obviously. But this is so like, how can we as a country be stable when we have our presidents pardoning everyone, including their own sons, and the security secretaries granting 18-month extensions to immigrancy to these people from other countries who are just running away from whatever problems their country has, and they do that not explicitly to be helpful to them, but almost like a middle finger to the next president, to Trump. And then Trump comes in and he immediately rescinds it like a week later, and then there's all these lawsuits regarding it. There should be laws preventing presidents from just whipping their wang out at the last second and saying "f you" to the next administration. Like that, there should be laws against that as well. It's ridiculous. And then lastly, for some inexplicable reason, there's 600,000 children who were enrollees in the DACA thing, which is for children who were brought to the U.S. illegally as children. 600,000 in 2023, which isn't too surprising because if I recall correctly, there's 3 million immigrants, illegal immigrants in 2023 alone. 3 million. And I mean, look, another 1 million migrants encountered by the U.S. Border Patrol were released into the U.S., typically with orders to appear in immigration court. Hmm. And I wonder how many of them account for all of the Reddit threads where the bleeding hearts are saying, "Oh no, this poor innocent child was kidnapped by ICE in the immigration court. This poor innocent 34-year-old Mexican child was kidnapped by ICE, the evil Nazis." They were probably in immigration court because they crossed the border illegally. They got the parole authority to give them a boon, and then they were given basically like a free pass into the country for a while. Then when they finally did have to go to immigration court, which everyone is saying the correct way, that they entered the country the correct way, all of these people in immigration court apparently did it the correct way. No, they not all of them. Some of them got in because of Biden's crazy ass play with the Parole Authority Act. This is just so stupid to me. How can you sit here and say that we should be bringing in people with the diversity visa lottery, which is what this video is about? We have this diversity visa that we're still doing even now, and we're bringing in millions of people who are victims of crimes and violence, of natural disasters and wars and all of this other stuff. How can we justify, like, are we not diverse enough? Why do we need to continue the diversity visa and bring in millions of people who are suffering from wars and stuff? And again, how can we do any of this when we're still suffering ourselves, when our own people are still suffering? It's unsustainable. It no longer appears to be a balancing act. It's the collapse of a big tent at a circus. I just can't see how it continues like this. Can you? Anyway, thanks for watching.
Take care now. Bye-bye then.